The whole tournament just broke, and Kael'thas wanted to evacuate Earth's contingent before anyone noticed. But Marcus Johnson, a human janitor from a small Ohio town, was already asking why they hadn't just tried turning it off and back on again. "I'm serious," Marcus said, holding his coffee cup like it was the most important thing in the coordination chamber. "You guys have basically the same problem we had with the college Wi-Fi system in 2019. It just stopped working. Nobody knew why. Turned out someone had daisy-chained the server backup through the main power distribution, and when one went down, everything cascaded. Kael'thas's secondary visual organs fluttered, the Zixnian equivalent of pinching the bridge of your nose in extreme frustration. Vexia, who had been reviewing the computational catastrophe logs for the past 8 hours, looked up from her data stream. "The human is suggesting we apply pre-industrial troubleshooting protocols to a quantum-locked system spanning 17 star systems." According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, "I'm suggesting," Marcus said, taking another sip, "that maybe you should actually try the simple thing before you blow up 500 years of planning." The Galactic Olympics occurred once every 5 centuries. Every 500 years, races from across the known galaxy converged on the neutral station Olympus Prime for 2 weeks of competition that determined sporting supremacy across civilizations. 2,147 competitors from 94 species had already arrived. 40 trillion credits in betting and sponsorship were already locked in. 17 worlds had spent generations training their athletes for this moment, and the entire system had failed 12 hours ago. Not gradually, not in stages, all at once. The computational framework that governed every event, every scoring protocol, every anti-cheating measure, and every safety parameter had experienced a cascading failure so complete that the backup systems had automatically triggered their own safeguards and gone dormant to prevent further corruption. The opening ceremony was 312 hours away. The probability of recovery was 0.3%. "Walk me through what you've tried," Marcus said, and somehow he managed to sound curious rather than condescending, which was maybe the only reason Kael'thas didn't have him removed from the coordination chamber. Kael'thas had convened the emergency council 40 minutes after the initial system failure. The room now contained 17 different species, each representing a different aspect of the computational infrastructure. They had tried everything that advanced civilization had developed over the past 4,000 years. Rebooting protocols failed. The system couldn't even initialize a boot sequence without triggering cascade failures in the parallel networks. Parallel system activation failed. The backup infrastructure was contaminated by the same logical virus that had infected the primary system. Whatever was wrong, it was endemic to the architecture itself. Complete wipe and rebuild failed. The wipe function itself had become corrupted. The system couldn't even erase itself properly. Quantum rollback to a previous state failed. The corruption was deeper than the operational layer. It was embedded in the template infrastructure. Consulting with their top computational specialists failed. The specialists had spent 6 hours analyzing the problem and concluded it was impossible to fix within any useful time frame. "So you're basically dead in the water," Marcus said. "We are dead in the water," Vexia confirmed, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone explaining an established fact. "In approximately 312 hours, we will officially announce the cancellation of the Galactic Olympics. This will be the first cancellation in 3,000 years. Rival federations will use this as evidence that we lack the technological infrastructure to maintain galactic institutions. Our political standing will be permanently diminished." "And the competitors who trained for generations?" Marcus asked. "We'll wait another 500 years for the next opportunity," Vexia said, "assuming the infrastructure is repaired by then." Marcus set down his coffee. "Has anyone actually tried just turning it all the way off? Like, completely off, and then waiting a few minutes before turning it back on?" The silence that followed was so complete that even the ambient hum of the life support system seemed to stop. That, Kael'thas said slowly, is the most primitive— primitive analog thinking for systems beyond human comprehension, Marcus interrupted. I heard that one before. Still might be worth trying before you cancel 5 centuries of planning, though. Zilar, the junior official who had been assigned to liaison with the Earth contingent, made a decision that would change galactic history. He looked at Kael'thas and said, "Let him look at it." "Absolutely not," Kael'thas began. "Not to fix anything," Zilar continued quickly, "just to prove it won't work. Then we can proceed with confidence toward cancellation protocols." Kael'thas stared at the human who drank coffee like the entire tournament wasn't imploding. "Fine," the chief competition director said. "Let him look, but this stays out of official record." Marcus smiled and drained the rest of his coffee. "Lead the way," he said. The technical core. The computational heart of the Galactic Olympics wasn't just large, it was absurdly, impossibly large. The chamber itself spanned 3 kilometers of the central station. 17 separate server complexes rose like geometric mountains from the polished floor, each the size of a continent module from old Earth. The sheer scale of computational architecture was supposed to inspire awe in visitors. It did. Marcus just looked at it and asked where the power distribution system was. There was a long silence. "The power distribution," Zilar said slowly, "is quantum-tunneled through folded space-time directly into the substrate layers of the station itself." Marcus nodded like this was exactly what he expected to hear. "So you can't turn it off?" "Correct," Vexia said, and for the first time in 20 years, she wondered if stating a system limitation was actually explaining a design flaw. "Our infrastructure cannot be powered down without destabilizing local spacetime around 17 systems simultaneously. It is, by architectural necessity, permanently active. This unkillability is the system's greatest feature." "That's your problem right there," Marcus said, and he wasn't joking anymore. His voice had shifted from casual observation to something more thoughtful. "You built a system that can never rest, never reset, never actually stop being what it was yesterday and start being what it needs to be today. That's not a feature. That's a trap." Kael'thas brought in Sinara, the lead computational architect. Sinara had designed the original system 4,000 years ago and had been consulting on its maintenance for every year since. She looked at Marcus with the infinite patience reserved for explaining obvious things to small children. "The corruption exists in the main computational matrices," Sinara explained, as if Marcus's presence was irrelevant. "We are attempting isolation protocols, the removal of contaminated sections, and reconstruction of redundant pathways." Marcus watched as Vexia's team initiated the isolation sequence. The procedure was elegant, sophisticated, and utterly doomed. The corrupted section tried to isolate itself from the rest of the system. Instead, it cascaded the corruption into the backup isolation systems. In 30 seconds, the failure spread from 17 infected systems to 23. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "you've got a different problem than you think." Sinara's expression suggested that a human had just questioned the laws of physics in her presence. "Our analysis is comprehensive." "Your analysis," Marcus replied, "is looking in the wrong place. The corruption isn't in the main systems, it's in the integration layer, the part that's supposed to be too simple to fail. It's like your system is trying to do something it was never designed to do, and every time it tries, the recursive logic creates paradox loops. You add more processing power to solve it, and it just makes the paradox bigger." They tried a quantum rollback to a previous uncorrupted state. The corruption was embedded deeper than that. Deeper than the operational layer, deeper than the maintenance protocols. It was in the template architecture itself, the fundamental blueprint from which everything else was constructed. Another cascade failure. Now 28 systems affected. After the third attempted solution failed, Marcus stood up from where he'd been watching the holographic displays. He walked to the center of the chamber and looked directly at Kael'thas. "What if you're not supposed to fix it?" Marcus said. "What if you're supposed to work around it?" The silence that followed was different from the earlier silence. This one contained actual confusion. "Work around it," Kael'thas repeated. "You mean abandon repair attempts?" "I mean," Marcus said carefully, "stop trying to fix the system to match your protocols. Instead, modify your protocols to match what the system can actually do." Even Xylar reflexively rejected this. The Galactic Olympics operated under competition protocols established 3,000 years ago. Those protocols were law. You didn't change law because of system failure. That was chaos. That was precisely what a 700-year-old treaty specifically forbade. Modifying competition formats was considered worse than cancellation. But Kael'thas was desperate enough to ask, "Explain." Marcus did. Back on Earth, when systems failed completely, organizations didn't wait for perfection. They improvised. They set up temporary solutions. They adapted competition formats on the fly. They created new rules that still maintained competitive integrity, but worked within their broken constraints. Every major sporting event in human history, Marcus said, has been modified mid-operation. Weather delays, equipment failures, venue changes, we don't cancel, we adapt. "So you're suggesting," Kael'thas said slowly, "we violate fundamental protocols established by the Galactic Union to save one tournament?" "I'm suggesting," Marcus replied, "you've been trying to fix the wrong thing. The system's not broken. Your approach to the system is broken." Vexia ran the numbers. If they modified competition formats to match what the corrupted systems could still compute, a 47% reduction in simultaneous event complexity, adjusted scoring methodologies, some events run sequentially instead of parallel, the games could proceed. It would be the first rule modification in 3,000 years. Kael'thas looked at Marcus, then he looked at Sinara, then he made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "We modify the protocols," he said. "Now we figure out how," Vexia added, her fingers already dancing across her data interface. "And we have 308 hours to do it." Everything changes. Once they committed to rule modification, everything changed, not just fixes, transformation. Marcus walked into the coordination center with a notepad, actual paper, which caused 17 different species to have simultaneous existential crises about technological regression, and suggested something that made Sinara's visual organs go completely dark. "Eliminate simultaneous events entirely," Marcus said, sketching on the pad like he was coaching a high school track team instead of redesigning the most important competition in galactic history. "Create tiered competitions instead, multiple heats, more matches, better storytelling structure." The room erupted. "That would require doubling the venue allocations," someone shouted. "That would extend the tournament. Duration by 40%, someone else added. "That completely invalidates our current scheduling matrix," a third voice added. But Xylar wasn't focusing on the problems. He was staring at Marcus's sketch, watching the structure unfold. Multiple heats meant participants got multiple chances. Luck factors reduced. Talent became more visible. It was fair in a way the simultaneous event structure could never be. "Wait," Xylar said quietly. "That's also more fair. We should have been doing this all along." Vexia's data processors hummed as she calculated the implications. Humans have been running their primitive athletic competitions in this format for how long? "Thousands of years," Marcus confirmed, not looking up from his notepad. "We call it having more than one heat. Revolutionary stuff." The Galactic Union's top sports theorists were brought in. The expectation was they would reject human input as crude, inefficient, and hopelessly naive. Instead, they saw what Marcus saw immediately. The modified system was more elegant, more equitable, more interesting. Dr. Zara, the chief theoretical sports scientist for all 17 known federations, reviewed Marcus's format proposals for 40 minutes. She pulled up her computational models. She ran simulations against historical competition data. She verified her mathematical frameworks 3 times. Then she said something that became the turning point for everything that followed. This violates every principle we've built our system around. Therefore, it should not work. Let me verify my math one more time. No, this actually optimizes competitive integrity by approximately 23%. The irony landed like a physical force. Humans hadn't revolutionized the Olympics. Humans had just done the obvious thing nobody thought to do because tradition prevented them. The implementation nightmare. Everything needed restructuring: venue usage, participant scheduling, official protocols, scoring systems, safety parameters. The computational systems themselves had to be reconfigured to handle new verification methods. But here's where it got interesting. The systems that were failing, they worked perfectly in this new configuration because it was actually simpler. Less parallel computation, more sequential processing, better suited to the corrupted substrate. Marcus stood in the technical core, watching the reconfiguration unfold, and something clicked. The system didn't break by accident, he said to Kael'thas. It broke because you were trying to force it to do something it was never designed for. Kael'thas processed this observation. You're suggesting our system has been operating outside its optimal parameters for 3 millennia? I'm suggesting, Marcus said carefully, that sometimes when something breaks, it's telling you something about how you've been using it. You weren't asking the right question. You were asking, how do we fix the system? Instead of, why is the system trying to tell us we're using it wrong? Crisis points and resolutions. Crisis 1 erupted from the ancient betting syndicates. They refused to accept modified formats. The existing probability models they'd used for 500 years, the models their entire industry was built on, were now obsolete. They would lose 60% of their predictive advantage. Marcus listened to their complaints, then said, what if you could update the odds in real time based on actual performance data? You'd know more than anyone about what's happening as it happens. Seems pretty profitable. The syndicates reversed their position within 40 minutes. Live odds updating meant they could profit from volatility rather than predictability. Better money, they became the format's most vocal supporters. Crisis 2 came from species claiming competitive advantage through the new format. The crystalline collective argued their 9-limbed morphology was better suited to multiple sequential attempts. The Vapor State Federation claimed tiered competitions disadvantaged species that required full-power atmospheric manipulation. The solution was high school sports basic. Create division structures within events. Match species by morphological similarity. Ensure fair groupings. It had been working on Earth for 150 years. Crisis 3 hit the opening ceremony team. The traditional ceremony was 5 hours of increasingly complex ritual, designed to showcase the system's computational power. The ceremony itself was breaking the corrupted system. Marcus suggested something radical, shorter, more impactful, actually entertaining. 1 hour focused on the competitors, not the infrastructure. A ceremony that told a story instead of running a program. The opening ceremony team looked at this proposal like Marcus had suggested canceling gravity. That's, someone finally said, unprecedented. Try it, Marcus replied. If it doesn't work, you've got 72 hours to fix it. Vexia ran the numbers one more time. The modified schedule was theoretically sound. The computational load was manageable. The fairness metrics were improved. The chaos was contained. We proceed with full implementation, she announced. We have 276 hours until opening ceremony. Kael'thas stood in the center of the coordination chamber, surrounded by 3,000 years of Olympic tradition crumbling into revision around him, and made a choice. He believed the human. The opening ceremony. The Galactic Olympics opened without incident, not just successfully, extraordinarily. The first event, the 10,000-meter sprint for bipedal competitors, was scheduled to be a single simultaneous race. Now it was divided into 5 heats, with the fastest qualifiers advancing to a final. The first heat broke the galactic speed record. The second heat broke it again. By the 5th heat, a relatively unknown sprinter from a mid-tier colony set a time that shouldn't have been possible given her previous performance records. The crowd erupted. This wasn't supposed to happen. Competitions didn't work this way. The best competitors showed up and won. Drama was circumstantial. Except now it wasn't. Audiences across the galaxy noticed immediately these games were better television. Tension built naturally through each successive heat. Upsets became possible. Strategic variation emerged as competitors had to decide when to push and when to conserve energy across multiple attempts. The first gold medal winner was a 9-limbed crystalline being from the methane collective of Vexus Theta 7. She won through an unexpected tactical approach, pacing herself across multiple heats instead of going all out in a single burst, only possible because of the new sequential format. During the medal ceremony, she credited her success to adaptability. "I was able to learn from my first heat," she said, her crystalline structure refracting the lights, "and adjust my approach. That was impossible in the old format." The realization. By day 3 of competition, multiple alien species had independently approached Marcus with the same observation. Their competitors were performing better because they could innovate within the structure. The old simultaneous events format had penalized creative problem-solving. It rewarded only raw power and predetermined strategy. You either had it or you didn't. Adaptation was impossible. The new format rewarded ingenuity. Vexia found Marcus in the observation lounge on day 3, watching the swimming competition, now divided into stages based on water displacement capability rather than body size. "You didn't improve the Olympics," she said without preamble. "You revealed that our system was actively suppressing innovation." Marcus stirred his coffee slowly. "Nah, I just watched how you did things and asked why a bunch of times. That's not expertise, that's just being honestly confused about your own process." "Your honest confusion," Vexia replied, "just modified 3,000 years of organizational structure." The Galactic Union Council. The Galactic Union Council convened on day 4. This should have been a controversy, a scandal, accusations of human manipulation. Instead, it became historical. Within 48 hours, preliminary studies demonstrated unprecedented results. Competitive outcomes more closely matched actual participant capability. A 23% improvement in predictive accuracy for talent identification. The modified format was objectively better at determining who the best competitors actually were. Audience engagement up 340%. Ratings across all 17 galactic networks had doubled, then tripled, then exceeded all previous records. Betting market stability improved through better data distribution. The live odds syndicates were reporting the most profitable games in galactic history. The unpredictability they'd feared became their greatest asset. Participant injury reduction by 12% due to sequential rather than parallel stressors. Athletes weren't pushing themselves to absolute breaking points in single attempts anymore. Innovation rate in tactical approaches up 187%. Coaches were developing new strategies that had never been possible under the old system. The head of the Galactic Union, a being who had been neutral on the entire modification throughout the crisis, made an unprecedented statement before the assembled council. The modifications suggested by Earth Representative Marcus Johnson represent not degradation of our standards, but evolution beyond our assumptions. We recommend integration of these methodologies across all future galactic competitions. It wasn't just accepted. It became doctrine. By day 5, the Council had issued formal orders to restructure every organized competition across all 17 known federations. 3,000 years of protocol had just been rewritten in 72 hours. The human transition. By day 5, with the Olympics running smoothly and the village facilities needing basic maintenance, Marcus was back where he'd started, hosing down the training grounds, literally cleaning. Zilar found him there, spraying water across the accommodation buildings where the Earth contingent was staying. "You're cleaning? After revolutionizing 5 centuries of protocol?" Marcus didn't look up from his work. System was dirty. Somebody's got to do it. Back home, people manage stuff and clean stuff. We don't have different species for different jobs. Probably should have mentioned that. Zilar stood in silence, processing this detail. The realization hit harder than anything Marcus had said about competition formats or system design. Humans just did multiple things because they had to, not because specialization was impossible, but because it wasn't a luxury they could afford. "You've changed everything," Zilar said finally. "I hosed down a building," Marcus replied. "That's not revolutionary, that's Tuesday." But as Zilar walked away, they understood something that would reshape galactic civilization in ways none of them yet comprehended. The revolution wasn't in the Olympics. The revolution was in the human who asked why, while cleaning up afterward. Integration begins. The questions started during week 2 of the Games and never stopped. Alien engineers wanted to understand human approach to structural failure analysis. Why did humans design systems with intentional redundancy instead of absolute efficiency? Why did they plan for disaster instead of assuming perfection? Medical researchers approached Marcus about human diagnostic methodology. Humans didn't always follow established treatment protocols. They adapted based on individual patient response. They experimented. Why was that acceptable? Social problem solvers studied how humans handled conflict resolution. Humans didn't consult authority hierarchies first. They talked directly, they negotiated, they compromised. It was messy and inefficient and somehow often worked better than formal mediation protocols. Every inquiry revealed the same pattern. Humans approach problems without assuming tradition was optimization. On the final day of the Games, Kael'thas stood with Marcus in the observation deck, watching the closing ceremony unfold below them. The ceremony was short, focused, and genuinely moving. Everything Marcus had suggested it should be. "Your species will fundamentally change galactic civilization," Kael'thas said. Not as a compliment, as an observation with weight behind it, the weight of history being rewritten in real time. Marcus watched the competitors celebrate below. "We'll probably just ask why you do things the way you do, and you'll realize you've forgotten why. That's all I did." "You did considerably more than that," Kael'thas replied. "I asked a question about turning things off and back on," Marcus said. "You're the ones who decided to reorganize 5 centuries of tradition because of it. That's on you." The cosmic implication. By the closing ceremony, 17 separate alien civilizations had opened formal dialogue with Earth about consulting on organizational efficiency. The Galactic Union was quietly restructuring how it evaluated procedural standards. A precedent had been set. Maybe tradition wasn't always best practice. Maybe asking why was more important than assuming because we've always done it this way. The revolution wouldn't be televised. It would be implemented through committee meetings and policy reviews and subtle reorganization of systems that had calcified under the weight of their own tradition. Understated transition. Marcus was back on Earth within 2 weeks. His high school track program suddenly had funding. Partnership offers arrived from 5 different alien civilizations wanting to understand human athletic training philosophy. Apparently, asking teenagers about their performance and adjusting training based on individual response, rather than applying universal protocols, was revolutionary. He was coaching the afternoon session, running the girls' 4x400 relay, when Zilar arrived in civilian clothes. The junior official was supposed to be documenting the visit for the Galactic Olympic archives. Instead, they were just watching. "So this is where it started," Zilar observed. "A human asking basic questions." "This is where I coach teenagers to run fast," Marcus corrected. "I didn't invent anything. I just wasn't scared of your rules." "Perhaps," Zilar suggested, "that's exactly what makes humans interesting. Marcus turned back to the track. One of his runners was struggling with her baton exchange. He walked over, demonstrated the handoff differently, and the runner nodded and tried again. Better. No protocols, no formal analysis, just observation and adjustment. The universe continued spinning. The Galactic Union continued restructuring. 17 alien civilizations continued implementing human methodology across their organizational systems. Things were different now, but nobody was celebrating. There was just work to do and a job to do it in. That's very human. That's the revolution. Nothing special, just asking questions and moving forward. Just another afternoon of coaching teenagers to run fast while galactic civilization quietly reorganized itself around the principle that humans had discovered thousands of years ago. When something breaks, it's usually telling you something important. All you have to do is listen.